intro. And welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Erica Leone, your Staff Assembly Vice President, President-elect. In my day job, I'm also the HR Business Partner for the College of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. Our session today is Navigating Social Media and Staying Connected with UCR. Our host today is the fabulous Melanie Romero, our Director of Marketing and Communication for Staff Assembly, as well as one of our amazing marketing specialists for Chaz. Today's session will be recorded and added to the learning management system. Please feel free to use the chat to ask any questions you may have that come up during the presentation. We'll do our best to answer your questions as they come up. If you were unable to answer the questions during the presentation, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. With that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Melanie.
Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming. Influenced, Elisa says, I know I sent a couple of reminders, but I just did that because I know sometimes during the summer everyone gets busy and I didn't want this to slip by if it was something that was important to you. And I can say, even though it's being recorded, it's definitely a presentation that I like to have a lot of interaction on. So personally, I think it's more fun to be here live. So thank you for being here. That being said, we're going to jump right in. I'm not going to do a whole bunch on my credentials and stuff because it's all listed right there. And Erica did a great intro. Thank you so much. So let's begin talking about social media as a concept. Social media, I regard as the technology we use to create and share content or to participate in social networking. Whereas social networking, to me, is all about community building. It's about connecting with other people like you, making friends with folks who aren't like you to learn more, and just coming together as a community like what we have at UCR that is so diverse and so awesome. So social networking uses the social media tools to accomplish its goals. So first survey, and Erica, if you want, I have these in a poll, which I can't see right now because I'm looking at my slides. I wanted to ask the group, which platforms do you use on the daily in your personal life? There we go. So go ahead and click there. You can choose multiple platforms, and this is what you use, what you're searching on, what you're interacting with friends on. It's not necessarily what you're using for work. So this is a at home, for fun, what you do. This is also very indicative to me of generational differences. We'll talk about those in a minute. So just give a couple more minutes for everybody to answer. Well, not minutes, seconds for everybody to answer. So it looks like everybody's on LinkedIn. Quite a few of us are on either Instagram, YouTube. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay. So we've got 48% participation, which is awesome. If everybody wants another moment to offer your input on this poll, that would be great because it'll give us a great snapshot to keep in our heads moving forward through this conversation. I know there's a lot listed on there, but there's a lot of platforms. So the second question is, do you feel comfortable connecting with your UCR colleagues on any of the following platforms? So the first question was like, what do you use on the daily for your inner circle, friends and family? The second one is, on which of these platforms do you feel comfortable connecting with your colleagues? And then the third question, I don't think it's closed yet, but, or at least I haven't closed it. The third question is, besides email, where'd it go? Besides email, which of these would be the best way for groups on campus or other staff relevant or organizations to communicate with you? So I don't know where all the answers went. Just reopened it. Okay, everybody go ahead and enter again. Sorry to make you do it twice.
I broke your poll, Melanie. I apologize.
That's okay. It's my first time building a poll. But this is where it's fun to get that interaction, and it'll give us a great snapshot looking at it. So the first question is, what do you use on the daily? The second is, what do you feel comfortable connecting with UCR folks on? And the third is, besides email, which everybody tells us they hate, but then at the same time, people always tell us, I didn't hear about it. So besides email, what would be a great way for us to tell you about things? So it looks like most folks are on Instagram, followed by LinkedIn and YouTube. Folks feel comfortable connecting on LinkedIn, but not so much on other things. And then besides email, LinkedIn or Instagram seem to be the front runners. So that looks great. We've got 63% participation. So if you want to go ahead and close that poll, Erica, we'll save that data for later. That's market research right there, folks. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back here and we'll start talking about the makeup of the UCR workforce. Looking at the data from this website, which I'm not going to drop in the chat, I will gladly share these slides with everybody afterwards, so don't feel like you have to be typing in URLs right now. This is the makeup. We've got 39.5% male presenting or male identifying, whereas we've got 60.5% female identifying. The data here was collected back in 2021. I can't speak to whether they asked if it's like trans woman, trans man, so don't ask me that, but feel free to ask them on that website. This is just to give us an idea of what the staff makeup at UCR looks like. Next, we have a breakdown by race. So this is giving you ideas of what kinds of groups you might be able to connect with based on how you identify. This one is the staff, not the students, not the faculty. So there's a bunch of drop-down menus on this website where you can filter the data, so that on this one, I was just looking at the staff makeup. So this to me was kind of surprising, actually. I was like, wow, it's a little bit different from our student makeup, but it's still very, very high on the Latinx and the Asian side, and then a little bit higher on the white identifying than say for the student body. Last but not least, and this was the one that probably surprised me the most. So leadership, take note. The bulk of our workforce would fall into the Gen Z or millennial generation, 52.9%. Only 18.3% would be categorized as Xennials or Gen Y. It's a little micro generation that was like basically born in like the late 70s, early 80s. Then we've got the Gen Xers at 15.5%. 11.5% would be categorized as baby boomers. And then only 1.8% of our workforce today would be categorized as baby boomers or into the silent generation. So this to me was really surprising. And it's really cool to think about from a community building standpoint of how important it is to keep your finger on the pulse of what's new and the emerging technology and things like that when you're thinking about building community within the UCR workforce. Here are a couple examples of staff affinity groups that already exist at UCR. So if you don't know about these, or if you are a member, feel free to drop it in the chat. The BFASA or Black Faculty and Staff Association. You can find information about these groups at the website listed at the top of this slide, diversity.ucr.edu/affinity groups. LCFSG is the Latino Chicano staff and faculty group. Then we have the LGBTQ+ out list. And we have the Disability Network. So these are 4 groups that exist already. So if you don't fit into one of these, but you see that, hey, we've only got 4 groups kind of rolling that are staff oriented, and you see a hole, kind of like entrepreneurism, right? If you see a hole in the market that you and a group of your friends could fill, what we can talk about today is how you could step up and create a community based around those interests. Looking at social media and groups on campus that would be relevant for all UCR staff to follow, this is a snapshot of ones that have information or share information that is relevant for all UCR staff. So obviously the primary UC Riverside profile, staff assembly, we're all about talking to staff, the HR department, UCR careers, TAPS or transportation and parking services, ITS or information and technology services. This is the technology we use to work every day. EHS or environmental health and safety. They're the ones sharing all the updates about COVID protocols and things like that. The police department, the dining. I don't know how many of you know that staff and faculty are welcome to go eat in the dining halls. And let me just say, it's delicious. So if you've never done it, go do it. Also, the barn and the hub have subcategory profiles, so separate from UCR dining, but they're affiliated. Also, UCR food trucks. We all love the food trucks. The library is another on-campus resource that is welcome and open to all staff to use. If you've got your R card, that's all you need. That is your library card. Elisa, see? All my old library colleagues, you remember? I love you still. Then archives. If you like looking at UCR history, the UCR archives profile shares all the old stuff from like way back in the day when UCR was first founded up until recent history years. UCR advocacy talks about like the advocacy things that are going on for staff. UCR services if you want to volunteer and get involved. The botanical gardens, they're open to the general public, but definitely also open to staff, not just students and faculty. And for those of you who are also UCR alumni, UCR Alumni Association. There's a lot of information that you could share back and forth, even if you're not alumni, with the Alumni Association and learn about the folks who have come up through UCR. There are several department profiles available. Obviously, the College of Engineering, CHAS, CNAS, School of Business, School of Education, School of Medicine, School of Public Policy, and then all of the individual departments underneath each individual college. Like I could not even fit them on one slide. The writing would be so tiny because even just under CHAS, there's more than 20 departments. So each one has all of their own subcategories. If health and wellness is your jam, these are a few profiles that you want to check out. Obviously, UCR Health is like the network of doctors and caretakers, things like that, as opposed to UCR Healthy Campus, which shares health information pulled from 9 different subcommittees on several different topics, including fitness and eating and mental health and sustainability, all kinds of things. The WELL, even though it's a student-facing group, they still share information that's relevant for staff. Even if they're talking to students, that doesn't mean it doesn't apply to us in terms of tips and information that they share. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff just said the Alumni Association is now free to join for anybody who is Highlander alumni. So that's great to know. The Student Recreation Center, despite its name, is also open to staff and faculty. You just have to purchase membership, and it is a state-of-the-art facility. Additionally, they share a lot of great content if you're into health and fitness and staying well. Basic Needs, or our pantry, is now fully relevant for staff thanks to the work of last year's executive board that did the work necessary to secure permanent funding for the staff pantry. So that will be an ongoing service available going into the 22-23 academic year. Additionally, the community garden. If you're interested in our garden, check that out. CAPS is another student-facing organization, but again, they're sharing mental health information, so it is still relevant for staff. So CAPS is Counseling and Psychological Services. So their services are only available for students, but the information they share on social might be relevant for you to follow. There is the Faculty and Staff Assistance Program, FSAP, but they don't have a profile. So that would be, you could look probably and follow the same kind of information over on CAPS. And Nicole's pointing out that CAPS has great workshops that are open to everyone. So that's great. Lastly on this list is UCR Active Minds. They are specifically engaged in suicide prevention. So that's, again, they're speaking mostly to students, but the information is relevant for staff. It's also relevant if you have children who are in that risk zone of teenager to college age. How many sports fans out there? I'm more of a dance fan myself, but I know a lot of folks love sports, and a lot of folks may not be aware that all of the sporting events at UCR are open to staff. I believe they sell season ticket packages, things like that for all of these different teams. So the main profile is UCR athletics. Then you've got baseball, softball, basketball, volleyball, soccer, track field, golf, women's golf, and the Athletic Association. So definitely, if sports is your thing, be sure to check them out. This is my people right here, arts aficionados. If you like art, if you like dance, creative writing, theater, music, film, digital production, this is the category to follow. So UCR Arts is more like studio art and photography, whereas UCR Performs is all of the performing arts oriented things. So this is a category that I manage, not a shameless plug, but our departments have a lot of fantastic stuff going on. In fact, tonight and tomorrow night is our virtual stage production. If you didn't get the email, check it out on our social posts. They're doing rebroadcasted recorded performances of Brownface and Red Oleanders that ran in this academic year. So if you missed it and you'd like to see it, check it out. Additionally, for my fellow science fiction nerds, the Eatonverse profile on Facebook or Twitter has all just Eaton content. That's all that they put. So again, a really cool thing to check out if that's your jam. This is another list of stuff that either has additional resources or stuff that's just fun to follow. So Life at UCR is aiming at prospective students, but they still share stuff that might occasionally be relevant for staff, maybe some hidden gems on campus, things like that. UCR Extension has classes and whatnot that are available to staff. The LGBTQ Resource Center, the Women's Resource Center, the Veterans Resource Center, or the SDRC, if that is a category that you identify with, definitely check them out. All of the staff affinity groups, look for them by name on social. Additionally, the Career Center is mostly oriented toward helping students, but again, following the tips that they offer might still help you in your career. If you want to volunteer and support commencement, check out that profile. They post stuff about commencement as well as I'm sure when they're seeking volunteers. Other fun things, UCR Pipe Band, her campus UCR, the Highlander, which is actually not a UCR sponsored paper. It is fully student run. The PHP or the Public Health Peer Group, UCR Summer for all of the summer programming, EPIC, which is the entrepreneurial innovation arm, and Launchpad UCR, which is kind of affiliated with EPIC, but it's like a stepping stone to it. And there are so many more. Somebody just told me yesterday about like dedicated profiles to like the UCR donkeys. And I don't know if anybody remembers the Twitter profile that was devoted to the UCR bell tower that would just chime at every hour. So fun stuff like that. Social media is supposed to be fun. And it's one of the ways to connect with the things that you like. So moving on from that, let's talk briefly about branding. So there's two meanings to the word. Obviously, the old school cowboy action of branding with a branding iron your cattle, or in this context, the promotion of a particular product or company by means of advertising and distinctive design. So looking at iconic brands, a lot of people, when you use the word branding, they just think it means a logo. So this is looking at like what a logo, you know, the ones that are highly, highly recognizable in the world today. And this list changes day by day. 10 years ago, it didn't look like this. So these are 10 of the top 20 most recognized logos or brands in the world today. And here's what I love about like branding design is when you start talking about the secret language of the shapes and symbols inside the logo design. This information is from a book by Angeles Arian called Signs of Life, 5 Universal Shapes and How to Use Them. So traditionally, triangles signify achievement, circles signify wholeness, crosses or plus signs signify connection, spirals signify transformation, and squares represent stability. So think of that when you're looking at the logo designs of brands or products that you use and see if that resonates or if that connection is there. Or maybe if you're like, I never thought that logo quite matched, maybe here's why. Let's look at a few examples of rebranding before and after, just for the fun of looking at design concepts. So here's one of my favorites. Who all remembers Federal Express? There's a lot of people here who have probably only ever known it as FedEx. But in the 90s, they rebranded because nobody said Federal Express. So this is a really smart example of rebranding. And if you look inside the EX, there's a little arrow in the design there. So it implies that it's going fast, which is part of the brand promise of FedEx. Another example of before and after rebranding is FedEx's competitor, UPS. So back in the day, people used to tie their packages with brown paper and string. But after FedEx rebranded, UPS also rebranded and brought it a little bit more modern looking, still implying strength and stability with the shield and the brown color, but getting it out of that string and paper packaging concept. Another concept in rebranding is the YMCA. So about 15, 20 years ago, the YMCA used to be on that list of top 10 most recognized brands in the world. But what happens sometimes is you rebrand and you fall off the list. It's not necessarily meaning that the rebranding was, quote, bad or good. It just means that people don't recognize that symbol anymore that's been around for over 100 years. People didn't call it the YMCA anymore. They just called it the Y. So when they rebranded, that's what they went with. And then the YMCA is like this tiny little thing now. And last but not least, missing the village people. That's why I know they still use that song at almost every event. A recent rebranding example that's a little bit closer to home was in June 2020, UCR rolled out our new rebrand. So it just brought us a little bit more modern, a little bit brighter colors, a little fresher, and gave us some unique iconography and symbols that we can use, including a lot of people don't know what that little yellow thing is underneath the UC. It's called a ray. So like a ray of light, you know, Fiat Lux. So I'll get more into this brand a little bit later. But let's talk about archetypes in branding now, because this is when I geek out and I really, really dive in, because I went off on a branding tangent, but I'm bringing it back now because Social media is about storytelling. Branding at its core is about storytelling. And what better to get into storytelling than to talk about Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, or all of these archetypal roles that if you just see the word intuitively, you already know what that means because you've heard a story about it, or you grew up with a myth, or you grew up with some kind of thing that makes it immediately recognizable. So it helps when you're doing your storytelling for marketing, for branding, for social media, if you've got one of these archetypes in mind as the core messenger of your brand. So here are a couple examples of a personal brand versus a brand personality. So most folks know who Steve Jobs is. If I had to pick an archetype for him, it would probably be the maverick or the outlaw, because he was very against the grain, doing things different than everybody else, but he had this vision that he was chasing. And that was, he didn't care that it was outside, he was coloring outside the lines. It really mattered to him to do things differently. Whereas a brand personality, if you ever want a good laugh, go to Twitter, look up Wendy's and look what they're posting, because they're usually roasting people, whether the competition, or sometimes you can ask them to roast you. It depends on the day, but I've seen them do it and it's always good for a laugh. Their brand personality, if I had to pick an archetype for them, would be a jester. They're here really to make you laugh. So it's slightly, you might not think of it as associated with a fast food brand, but they've carved this niche out, and everybody who knows them knows that this is what they do, and it makes them memorable and likable. Oprah, on the flip side, compared to Steve Jobs, who was an outlaw, Oprah's like the nurturing, warm, loving caretaker. She makes people feel welcome and connected, and she's very empathic in how she communicates. So completely distinct. If she tried to come out as a rebel, it would ring false. Like if Steve Jobs tried to come out as like a caregiver, we'd be like, that doesn't feel right. So innately, your brand identity, your archetype has to be deeply aligned with your personality. And if you are representing a brand, like an organization, you have to understand the heart of that organization and that brand, so that the way you write your communications vibes right with their archetype. The last one I'll use an example of a brand personality is Benefit Cosmetics. They do these little cards. Again, you can ask for it on certain days. They usually do it around Valentine's Day, things like that, but they do it periodically throughout the year too. And you just tell them, hey, hit me up, or if you're having a bad day, you can go there sometimes, and they'll send you one of these little cards. Now, if you're a makeup fan, you know that each of the things on these cards is one of their products. But they did it in such a way that it's almost like a little Valentine's card, just as a feel-good experience. So it's a shameless product plug, but at the same time, it's really sweet, something that they can send out to their customers and their fans. So at the core of branding, marketing, and messaging, you have to know yourself. And whether that's you as like your personal brand, or as you as the voice of the organization that you're doing marketing for, just knowing yourself is the key. Start there. But then think about, what is your number one goal for your brand? Is it connection, structure, achievement, or discovery? Because then that might help guide you back to which one of these archetypes goes best with your brand. And I've seen some people mix and match archetypes just a little bit, like one will be their primary and then they'll have like a little sprinkle of this in there. So if I had to guess for UCR, because we are all about knowledge, right? So maybe the explorer, looking for that discovery, that journey of knowledge, or the sage, but more than anything else, we are about belonging. So every man, every woman, every person, like that's another really good one for us. So if it was a blend of those two, that would be my guess, because it's about achieving bigger things, but everyone can do it. So that's just one example. So you ask first, who are you? What's your age, gender, ethnicity, worldview, aspirations, values, frustrations, and challenges? These are the insight-driven questions that will help you speak in the language of the people that you're talking to, so that your words vibe with them. Then most importantly, ask the same questions about the people in your audience. And on this one, you're going to go one level deeper, because demographics cover age, gender, ethnicity, worldview. Psychographics cover their aspirations, values, frustrations, and challenges. But then where social media can get really fun is when you get into like the habits and the pop culture of things. And you can tap into like, what are their favorite hobbies, their TV shows, magazines, books. And then you can see how those will come out in memes that you can use, that everybody like gives them a little smile or makes them laugh or something like that, that makes it a little bit more memorable and engaging. So first ask, who do you serve? And you want to be able to boil it down into a really simple phrasing, maybe not quite this simple, but all along those lines, right? Like if you ask Tony Stark, what are you? He would rattle this off really quickly. So can you do that same thing about the folks in your audience? Like 3 or 4 words that describe who they are, succinctly and clearly. And then think again back about your brand. How are you different? Not necessarily how are you better. Think of how are you different in a way that vibes with those people that you want to serve. Lastly, what do you do best? What do you do best? Not how are you best? What do you do? What can you do for them better than the next person or the next company? If you put all of that together, that can help you to write your brand promise. And then this can be one of the core tenets of your messaging out to your audience on social media. Your difference plus your best service equals your brand promise to your customer. So let's take a look at some branding in action. Looking at the University of California, right? Our colors are blue and gold. We have the home, like the mothership, right? University of California. And then all of the other campuses have their own identity, slightly distinct from the mothership. People would call this a house of brands. So University of California is like the house, but then all these different brands kind of coexist within it. We're all affiliated, we're all related, but we're not the same. Fun fact about, why is it not going? Hold on. There we go. Fun fact that a lot of folks don't know is that the University of California actually influenced the branding of the state of California. And here's how. So in 1875, University of Berkeley, UC Berkeley, chose blue and gold as their colors. And then it wasn't until 1951 that those colors were officially adopted as the California state colors. So I love that little bit of trivia. I also love this graphic. Hats off to the folks who designed that. But that is something that I actually learned about when I was working with a library doing the UC Library Search launch. So fun fact. Here's another thing that I think is super fun, and it really worked out in our favor. Color preferences by age and gender, Design Mantic did this survey. And obviously we chose our colors back in the 1800s, but look how lucky we are that our target audience, 20 to 30 years old, their 2 favorite colors are blue and gold. So that's a happy accident. But if you're thinking intentionally about who are you marketing to, this is the kind of research you want to do when you're crafting your branding and your message. Excuse me. Looking at some awesome designs, I think are on our campus. Like this is a beautiful design that Sarah at the SRC did for the recreation center. I think Wreck It is a really cute tagline, especially when they call it the rec center, but then you've got like, I'm gonna wreck it, like Wreck-It Ralph, right? So super, super cute design using our branding and our colors, but still in a really fun and unique way. Healthy Campus, Michael Kaplan did this design for our logo and our word mark. And then my team and I did the design at the top to represent all of the different subcommittees. So eat fresh, move more, stress less, party smart, live well, stay well. And we were just trying to find like a 2-word phrase to capture what each category or each subcommittee represented. Additionally, the Creator Lab, also open to staff occasionally in the library, wanted to embrace an artist/maverick archetype. So this is a design that I did back when I was at the library that we wanted a little bit brighter colors, still bringing in the blue and gold, but a little bit of other things. And then a fun fact is all of the little icons at the top represents different services, but the overlay is a shape called a Merkaba, which is a sacred geometry for representing like creation. So creativity is at the core of the Creator Lab brand. Moving on to talk about marketing. If your branding represents who you are, marketing is about telling people about who you are. So bringing it back to social media as a marketing tool. First and foremost, when you're on social media, this is huge for me. You want to meet your customers where they are. So think in terms of mobile first design. How many of us are doing social media on a computer? Most of us not. Most of us are on one of these. So if they're on their mobile device, you have to think in terms of UX or user experience and design so that the content is optimized for that device. And here's a mistake that I see a lot of people making that I'm like, every single time I see it. If they're viewing your content on their smartphone, how are they going to scan the QR code in that image when it's on their screen? They don't have another camera. So stop putting QR codes on social media icons and graphics. That's like my little soapbox I'll stand on. But that's one example of user experience. Another is if the text is too small. Another is if there's too much text, like you want it to be small and simple, like boom, recognizable as they're scrolling past in 3 seconds or less. The other thing you want to do when you're doing marketing is you want to have a content calendar. So think about reverse engineering your plan. What action do you want your customers to take? And then build your plan backwards from that goal. Think about promoting events, promoting holidays, or building your content around those and announcing special promotions or other events. So backing up from that date, how far in advance do you need to begin posting about it? Think quality over quantity. Don't post the same thing 15 times. Post it at strategic times in different ways, like once to the grid, once to the story, once over here, once with a GIF, once with, a video, something like that. Mix it up and make it fun so that it doesn't just feel like the same thing over and over again. Always focus on service over sales. And in the university, we're not like a sales thing, but like we are wanting them to take an action, right, with this thing. So think of that as the goal. The action is the sale. Going against the grain is another thing that's really important when you're thinking about social media, because if you do what everybody else is doing, you're just going to look like a sea of samies, right? Thank you, Jeff. Mad respect for pronouncing it, Jeff. It's always confusing because I always think of peanut butter as Jif, but yeah, the creator said Jif, so okay. Give a call to action on almost every social media post. Yes, I'm clicking to news. Well, I'm clicking to the different lines on this slide, Teresa, so if you can't see it, let me know. But give a call to action on every post you do, or almost every post you do. Some of it can just be informational or fun, but most of the time you want to think about behavioral triggers, right? Create something so that you are driving them to do something. Think about core content pillars. So the first one of these is, of course, your brand promise that we talked about a moment ago when talking about branding. How are you different? What do you do best? How do you make a positive impact on your audience's lives at home and work? Save them time, money, or headaches, or help them to achieve their biggest dreams. That could be one of your core content pillars. The next one can address your audience, like frequently asked questions, common pain points, celebrate their wins. This one's huge. Huge, huge, huge. Think about our graduate tributes on social media. That's celebrating wins, right? Or when a faculty gets some kind of a fellowship and we just share news about it with pictures, that's celebrating a win. And those are some of our most engaged content. Aim for the right vibe, because like attracts like. There used to be a maxim in marketing that said your vibe attracts your tribe, but we're not really supposed to use the word tribe in that context anymore because it kind of diminishes the meaning of it. But think of energetically vibing with the people that you want to attract, because like folks like you will be attracted to you because y'all vibe with each other. So write as if you're talking to one person who represents your ideal client, rather than, hey, everybody, blah, 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 like, hey, you, we want you to come join us. Like it feels more personal and more engaging when people feel like you're talking just to them. A third pillar could be built around what your analytics tell you. So when you look at your analytics, if you determine what performed well, which posts got the most engagement, which ones resonated with your audience, and then you double down, you do more of the same, lather, rinse, repeat, because that's what's working. And when it comes down to it, you just give them what they want, right? Last but not least, trends and news. Now here's the tricky part, right? What's happening in the world around you, what's new and improved in your industry, or which topics are trending, but keep in the back of your mind, how can you be a trend setter instead of just a trend follower? How can you set the tone? How can you be the person that starts the new trend? If you can think of things, tap into the younger generation, whether in your coworkers or your students, and ask them for guidance or feedback or suggestions. They're definitely willing to give them. And in a lot of cases, it's actually students who are doing these posts. So guide them with a gentle hand and let them surprise you, because sometimes they will, and it will be delightful. 3 keys to high performing content on social media that have helped a lot. And you can't always hit all 3, but if you can educate, that's great. Share information that's valuable, useful, and actionable. Entertain, make them smile, make them remember you. And if you can inspire them to take action, to do something differently than what they would normally do. If you can get those three, it's like the Holy Trinity, right? But if you can at least get one or two of them, then you're probably going to have content that's performing well. Looking at scheduling software, if you're doing this professionally, you kind of have to have something. So here's a list of different ones that I've heard of used around campus or at other universities. eClincher is the one I use. It's my personal favorite because they have a lot of built-in integrations with like free stock imagery software, as well as like you can schedule on multiple platforms at the same time and make it a little bit easier on yourself so that you can get this boiled down to a very small amount of time that it takes to do this when you've got your plan. And then you just got to plug everything in. So this is an example of what the scheduling dashboard looks like. So over on the right, you've got the calendar. It shows you what days you've got stuff scheduled on. On the left is where you're going to choose the profiles you're posting to. And the other cool thing about eClincher is you can manage multiple brands within the same thing. So ours has like a UCR Chaz, UCR Performs, UCR Staff Assembly, and then like we've got room for more. I think we can have up to 10 brands in there with our current plan. So if anybody has questions about scheduling software, that's probably best kept for, feel free to email me afterwards. But I'd be happy to screen share sometime and show you if you're looking for something to use. 13 common mistakes to avoid on social media. So if you don't have a plan, intentional strategy, or clear goals, how are you going to know if you did well? If you're buying followers, honestly, in my humble opinion, complete waste of money. You want people who are real, engaged, and likely to actually buy your services or use your services. Because if you're just buying randoms, honestly, secret, they're bots. Most of them are bots. You don't want them anyway. If your content is one size fits all rather than tailored to your audience, it's not going to resonate. Again, if you're talking to everyone, talk to one individual person. If you have multiple client avatars, like one male, one female, one older, one younger, talk to one at a time with each individual post. You can do that too, but talk to one. Using QR codes on social media. We already talked about this. Looking unoriginal. Here's a design concept. So if you just go to Canva or something like that, and you just take their design and you don't make any changes to it, you look just like everybody else who used that design. Update it so it reflects your brand colors, your fonts, use some imagery that's custom to you. Make it your own, but use the template as a jumping off point. Don't just leave it exactly that way. Using the wrong hashtags. Like hashtags could be its own thing. So I'll just touch on this briefly. If you look and find ones that are relevant for your audience, that will perform better than if you have one that's got like 8 million followers but isn't relevant. Like I see this all the time on TikTok. They just put whatever's trending and it drives me nuts. I'm sure it gets it higher views, but it's not relevant. So it's just like scroll, scroll, scroll. So you want stuff that people are actually going to stop and not scroll past you. Ignoring or deleting comments. This really comes down to customer service. So if you're talking to your people, but you're ignoring their comments on social media, then it's not a dialogue anymore. Then it's just, a monologue from the stage and people are going to lose interest. They like it when you are interactive. Obviously, always speak in a way that's, representative of your work or representative of your brand. And if something is negative, get with the right people like ASAP to talk about how you want to address it. Address it publicly, get them off of social media and into the DMs and offline into like a phone or an email chat as soon as possible so that that person feels like they've been served and taken care of. Very, very important. Not interpreting analytics, like they put all that data there for you. So if you don't even pay attention to it, you're missing so much guidance that you could be using wisely to make your social media strategy even better. Forgetting about accessibility. This is huge when you're thinking about being an inclusive platform, and some scheduling software is better than others about making it easy to put this stuff in there, but like alt text or captions, that means so much. Like a little sidebar, right? Like not social media, but I was in a makeup store one day and I'm fair skinned. And the lady next to me was very dark complected. And she did this full on happy dance because this one line of makeup had expanded their concealers to have all these darker shades. So they now included her. And I literally saw this woman almost get tears in her eyes because she was now a part of their thought process. That's the difference that social media can make if you're including your alt text in your caption. Somebody on the other end somewhere is going to do that happy dance because you thought of them. Not building relationships. This again goes back to ignoring or deleting comments. Social media is supposed to be social. It's supposed to be interactive. Talk to your people, listen to your people, make it go both ways. And that's what helps build the relationship and build the community. If you make everything you're posting all about you instead of all about your audience, again, they're going to gradually unfollow and kind of tune out like that. That's where that one content pillar about celebrating their wins and addressing your audience's questions and concerns, that's where it really feels like you're serving them, even if it's just through a platform like LinkedIn or Instagram. And last but not least, if you're not collecting emails, what are you doing? Social media could go away tomorrow. Like, who remembers Google Plus? I see a few hands. Who remembers Periscope? These platforms were like hot for a minute and gone. So if you spend all this effort building a following on a platform that could be gone tomorrow, and you don't have even a Friendster, MySpace, yeah, all these other things, right? If you spend all that effort and you're not getting people to subscribe to your list or something where you have just, think of it as a backup, right? But it really should be your primary way of communicating with them, especially for something where you've got a special announcement to make, or you're doing donor development or alumni communications or promotions for upcoming shows. Like, if you don't have an email list, it's really, really hard to guarantee that they're going to get it, because it's a gamble. Social media is like pulling a slot machine, right? Like, they may see it, they may not. Twitter, I think they say each tweet has a lifespan of about 18 seconds. Yeah, so it's really short. So getting emails somehow from your social media posts, drive them to an opt-in page or have it in your link tree or something where they can sign up to get emails specifically to hear from you and your organization. That's probably the most critical mistake I see people not doing. Here's a couple books that I would definitely recommend if you are doing this in any kind of work capacity. Fascinate by Sally Hogshead is all about building a fascinating brand. And The Power of Visual Storytelling by Katarina Walter is all about using visuals and videos for your social media. Both are super fun reads and both are available on Amazon. So I'll pause here for a second and see if we have any questions. There is more, but let's see where everybody's at, because I know we're at 12:43 already.
Feel free to pop your questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, raise your hand, whichever.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like you did such a good job, Melanie. No question.
Okay, well, the next part. Oh, I see Julie's got a question.
Hi,
And are you
Melanie.
too?
So if we wanted to have someone in charge, like for lead, if we wanted someone in charge of our social media, and I know I wrote down all the notes about like the mistakes and the tips and things. How often would you say they would like to or should post? Is it like once a week, twice a week? Is there too much, too less?
There's definitely too much. Industry best practices usually suggest that if you can't provide content 2 to 3 times a week, that you might do better to like piggyback on someone else's content. So during the summer, especially when like most of our student body is gone, 2 times a week is plenty. Probably more than enough. You could probably even get away with 1, but like the less you post, the more you fall off the algorithm's radar. So even if you just post twice a week, say Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, something like that, it just keeps you relevant and the algorithm doesn't think that your profile's been abandoned. And it could be snackable content, super short, sweet, just a little bit of info. Doesn't have to be, War and Peace.
Hey, Melanie, great presentation. I was
Thanks.
super impressed with being able to touch on so many different subjects. My question is in relation to eClincher, which is the platform where you post something and it shares it with all platforms. I've been using it, but I've been concerned that there are some challenges with the native algorithm, and so what problems have you come across with let's say if I post through eClincher, I won't get the analytics that I get on Facebook, or I think sometimes these companies are blocking that. So have you found that? Do you know anything about that?
I haven't seen that,
Okay.
but I have some contacts within the company that I'd be happy to share with you, Jonathan, and we can do a separate call, troubleshooting stuff like that, because they're very responsive.
Perfect.
Like I've got the COO's email. So we'll get on a call with him and be like, hey, we need help with this. And
Perfect.
they're really, really great. I don't know about Google Calendars. I will have to check with that.
Okay.
And yes, I'll give copies of the slides so you don't have to write down everything. But if we don't have any other questions, I have the last part of the presentation that is highly interactive. Get your chat fingers ready, because this is the fun part when you're talking about design. but I can find out about the Google calendars for you, Cynthia, and I can email you directly. Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about color psychology while we've got the time, because we can do some more questions. Okay, so this is a 1-by-1 thing. And what I want you to do is in the chat, type just one word that you think of when you see the color red. Energy, rose, power, love, passion, power, captivating, blood. Yep, love. Okay, so traditionally, anger, very good. Red in design represents these archetypal concepts. So a lot of things that people already put: power, passion, affection, love, danger, survival, and rage. And here's some examples of designs, logo designs that use the color red. So you can think to yourself if you think that fits the right vibe. What about orange? Same question, one word: warm, homey, relaxation, calm, pumpkin, energy, cozy. Yep. So orange, just like the pick, fall. Yeah, orange in design tends to represent power, energy, friendliness, fun, comfort, warmth, stimulates appetite, good for restaurants like McDonald's, and also can represent motivation or positivity, growth. Okay. Talk to me about yellow. Clean, fun, happy, sour, smooth. Yes, sour as I'm drinking my lemonade. Acidic, optimism, happiness, summer, fresh, sun, bright. So yellow in design often, like you said, represents happiness, joy, cheerfulness, optimism, inspiration, anxiety, or a very old-fashioned definition of yellow. If anybody remembers the phrase yellow-bellied, fear. So a lot of people, that's really old-fashioned. It shows you I grew up watching Looney Tunes. What about green? Fresh, 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 fresh. Money, nature, stimulating. Yep. Growth, renewal, new. So green in design very often is used to represent balance, harmony, not Southern California, Christy. Very true. That's another color category. We'll get there. But green very often represents balance, harmony, clarity, rightness, nature, life, rest, peace, and growth. Okay, so when I lived in Russia, fun fact, there are 2 words for blue, 2 distinct concepts and colors. So this is the first one. When you think of this color blue, what do you think? Serene, calm, airy, relaxing, yep. Cool, open. What about this color blue? One is голубой and one is синий in Russian. Very distinct colors, and they will not hear that they are the same color from Americans. Sky's the limit, mysterious, cool, formal, tradition. Yeah, distinct differences, just with 2 different shades of the same color to us, right? So in branding, where'd my thing go? There we go. Blue in design represents trust, dependability, reliable, responsible, or soothing, calm, distance, cold, or unfriendly. I think a lot of the negative meanings of these can be overcome with good design. What about purple? Royalty, mysterious, cool, spiritual, celestial, special. So in design, traditionally, violet represents imagination, spirituality, luxury, royalty, courage, mystery, or magic. So it is no wonder that like the Harry Potter or the Willy Wonka designs are purple, right? Think about that. Pink, distinct from red. What do you think of when you see pink? Fun, energy, girly, femininity. So in design, this is kind of like blue, right? You can have hot pink or you can have baby pink. And I didn't do 2 separate colors. I probably should have, but pink can represent compassion, unconditional love, soothing, caring, understanding, nurturing, hope, romantic, empathy, or immaturity. Like you said, girly, like childish, childlike. What about brown? Talking about Southern California, Christy. Earthy, warm, dry, natural, depressing. And then there's the coffee lovers who are like, nature. Okay, so brown in design very often represents structure, security, protection, support, serious, safe, or reserved. What about gold? rich, bougie, power, royalty, flashy. Yep. Richness, elegance, regal. It was actually very hard to find gold logos. I could only find these 5. So charm, confidence, luxury, treasure, friendliness, abundance, and prosperity for the color gold. Standoffish. What about silver? Sleek, classic, sterile, modern, tech innovation, elegant, fancy, standard, cold, yep. Futuristic. So silver in design tends to be that glamorous, high-tech, graceful, sleek, but negative, cold, indecisive, or dull. I honestly think that's like if you do a bad shade of gray, it would fall more into those last 3, but silver, as long as it's got that luster to it. What about black? Bold, sleek, mystery, classy, sophisticated, yep, rich, secretive. So yeah, you guys are on the money. And then if you look at, sophistication, serious, control, independence, mystery, the negative could be depression or evil, or in Western culture, death. What about white? Clean, pure, holy, purity, pure, absent, fresh, pure. Yep. So white, very often pure, innocent, cleanliness. Again, a lot of these are told from like a Western perspective with the new beginnings, blank slate, tabula rasa, right? New ideas, equality. But it can also represent loneliness, emptiness, or in Eastern culture, death. So always, always, always keep your audience in mind. This is just a fun thing that I like to close with, because when you look at messaging, and you look at like a crossover with like, where do things hit in your body? Remember when I said about yellow bellied with that solar plexus chakra, that's like the root of courage. A lot of messaging can be tied to this. When you look at like the red, the tribal loyalty, the creation of partnership, and going up this system. And one of the best examples of this is in recent politics. Like if you think about the Red Party, right? What are they talking about? It's like, what's that movie? Fiddler on the Roof, tradition, right? Whereas if you look at the Blue Party, it's very future focused. Vision, like what do we want it to be versus what was it? And that can come into it with a lot of where you're looking to send your message from. Is it from a place of tribal loyalty, like everybody has to do this to belong, or is it like we're all reaching for this grand vision of the future and all of the different meanings in between? So that's all I've got. Do we have any other questions before we wrap it up?
Don't be shy. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, how great was that? That was an amazing presentation, Melanie. Thank you so much. Wow, she blew that out of the park. So yes, we will be sharing this presentation and we'll be posting it on the LMS. Thank you guys so much for attending this Lunch and Learn from Staff Assembly for July. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. We have more events coming soon. So please register for our town hall this next Thursday, the 28th. We'll be hearing from Provost Watkins on strategic planning for our campus. So please register. The link is there. And for more information on our upcoming events for Staff Assembly, you can just go to that site, staffassembly.ucr.edu. And again, we appreciate you guys spending your lunch hour with us. Melanie, you're amazing. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day, everyone. Thanks again.